1.5 is about linear inequalities. And you're going to want a ruler because we're going to be practicing graphing linear inequalities today. And then in 7.6, we will get into solving the systems of linear inequalities. So what we have done prior to now is we graphed all inequalities on a number line. So if you look at this example here, this is where we've been. So if you'll recall, remember you could have circles that were open or closed, and then you would either shade left, which we shaded left if our symbol was less than or equal to, and then we would shade right if our symbol was greater than or equal to. Well, the difference is what we're going to be doing today is you're going to actually be graphing on the coordinate plane. And so you're going to be graphing a line on the coordinate plane. And what you should notice is this line would be considered like an open line, which an open line doesn't really make sense. So we call that a dashed line. And so just like before, over here, we knew our circles were going to be open or closed based on our inequality symbol. Remember, if there wasn't an equal to, your circle was open. And if there was an equal to, you would close your circle. So in that same way, so I'm going to erase this and then we will move to the next slide. In the same way, it's the same idea. So if you'll notice, here is the equation or the inequality of our line. And you graph inequalities just like you would graph if there were an equal sign. So notice that my y-intercept is +1, so they put a point at +1. My slope sits in front of x, so my slope would be up 1 and over 1, or down 1 and left 1. And because my inequality symbol doesn't have an equal to part, my line is going to be dashed. It's going to be open. And then the second part is always shading because inequalities cover more than just the line. And so if you look, this inequality symbol is a greater than symbol. And so for a greater than symbol, we shade above the line, which is why we're shading over here on this part. Okay? If you notice on this other equation over here, so here is this equation right here. Again, notice this is my y-intercept, so I graph it first up here at +4, and then my slope is -2/1. So I go down 2 and right 1, down 2 and right 1. This time, notice that there is an equal to with that inequality symbol, so my line is solid. And this is like, solid is the same thing as what we did before where we had a closed circle. Dashed was when we made an open circle. And then also notice that we are shading a region. Okay, so this part is important. When you're asked to find the solutions of an inequality, the solutions are the coordinates of your points that make the inequality true, which means you're looking at coordinates in the shaded region because there's more than just one point that can work for an inequality. Now, knowing where to shade. So you have to know if you're going to shade above or below. And so here's what we have. If you have a less than symbol or a less than or equal to symbol, you're going to shade below. If you have a greater than or equal to symbol, you're going to shade above your line. So the concept for today is shading and then solid or dashed lines. Okay, this first example, I'm going to come back to that one and we're going to actually do this one first, this next one here. Okay, so we're going to do this one first. All right, so we're going to graph the line y is greater than -2. And so this is the same thing. Like when you graph it, you're just thinking of it like there's an equal sign. So remember, when there's no x value, I'm going to go to -2 on my y-axis, And remember, this means I'm graphing a horizontal line. But here's what we want to pay attention to. My symbol does not have an equal to part. So I want my line to be open or dashed. And then that's a greater than symbol. So we're going to shade above. Okay, so here's my point. And then I'm going to graph my line through it here. Let's see if I can. Here we go. And I want my line to be dashed. And so you're going to, using your ruler, draw a dashed line. Okay, so there's my dashed line, and then I'm going to shade because I want to include above. Greater than is above. So any point in this shaded region would be a solution to this inequality, and this would be my answer. Okay, so here's our next one. Whoops. Okay, so the next one. So again, we're going to graph the line just like you always would. So you're going to graph your y-intercept first at -2, and then I'm going to graph my slope, which is +3/5. So I'm going to go up 3 and over 5. Then I can do the opposite of that and go down 3 and left 5. Okay, and then I'm going to get ready to make my line. But before I do that, I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly. So this has an equal to part. So my line is going to be closed or solid. Which, yeah, let's just write solid. My line will be solid, and then this is a greater than symbol. So I'm shading above. Okay, so we're going to draw a solid line through these points. My line wasn't great, but I tried. Okay, and then draw my arrows on the end, and now we're going to shade. So again, greater than means to shade above. So I'm going to go where my line is crossing the y-axis, and I want to go above it. So I want to shade everything on this side of my line. And so that's going to look like this. And that is my solution to my inequality. Okay? All right. So now I'm going to go back and let's do this first one that I had. Okay, so we're going to graph this x is less than or equal to 5 line. So remember when it's just an x line, we're graphing a vertical line. So we're going to go to where x is 5, and we're going to put a point, and then we're going to graph a vertical line through that. I do have an equal to part, so this is going to be a solid line. And then if it's less than, we're shading below. Okay, so let's graph this line here. And it's going to look like this. Okay. Now, the difference is when I have a vertical line, notice I have a region over here, which is to the left, and I have a region over here, which is to the right. I don't have an above and below. So you want to think back to what you did on a number line. And so on a number line, if you had a less than symbol, you shaded to the left. And so we are going to shade everything to the left of this line. And your lines, remember, are acting as your boundary. So you cannot cross your lines. Those are your boundaries. Okay, so now let's go to this line. So we haven't done this line yet. So I'm going to start and I'm going to graph my y-intercept at +7. So I'm going to go up 7 on the y-axis. And then my slope is -4/1. Remember, if it's negative, you want to go down and right. Down and right, or you could go up and left. Okay? And then we're going to get ready to graph this line But before we do that, we just want to make sure no equal to part. So we're going to be drawing a dashed line. And then this is a greater than symbol, so we're going to shade above. So we're going to take our ruler, and we're drawing a dashed line here. And we're going to go all the way across. Okay, so here's our line. And then I want to shade above. So if you're having trouble figuring it out, go to where your line crosses the y-axis and go up. That means I need to shade on this side of the line because this line cuts this graph into two boundaries. Here's one boundary, here's the other boundary, and it's not like left and right, it's above and below. So go to the y-axis, we're going above. And so I want to shade everything on this side of my line. And so any point in that shaded region would be a solution to this problem or to this inequality. Okay. Now, this example, recall this is in standard form. And so mostly what most of you are doing when it's in standard form is you're getting it in slope-intercept form, which means you're getting it in this y equals form. And so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to solve this for y by adding 3x on both sides. Then I'm simplifying left to right. Negative 3x and 3x cancels. I'm going to bring down my 4y, bring down your symbol just like you see it, and then my x comes first, and then my minus 8. And then I'm going to divide by 4 everywhere. So I have y is less than or equal to, bring down this fraction as is, 3 over 4x, and then 8 over 4 reduces to a 2. So now I'm going to graph this. So I'm going to graph my y-intercept first at negative 2, and then I'm going to graph my slope of 3 over 4. So I'm going to go up 3 and over 4, or the opposite of that would be down 3 and left 4. And then we're going to look and see. So this is an equal to part. So we're going to be graphing a solid line. And then that's a less than symbol. So I'm going to shade below. So we're going to take our ruler and we're going to graph. And we're going to go all the way across. And so there's my line. And I want to shade below the line. So once again, I'm going to go, where is my line crossing the y-axis? And I need to go below it. So I am shading the region on this side of my line. And there is the solution to that inequality. Okay, let's look at this one. So again, I want to get it in slope-intercept form. So I want to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract x on both sides first. So x minus x cancels. Bring down my 5y. Bring down my less than, my negative x, and my positive 15. Then I'm going to divide by 5 everywhere. And remember, there is a 1 in front of this, a negative 1. So when I simplify this, I'm left with y is less than, and negative 1 over 5 just stays like that. It doesn't become a 5, it's a fraction. So negative 1 over 5x plus 15 over 5 is 3. And now I'm going to graph that. So I'm graphing my y-intercept first at positive 3. And then I'm graphing my slope right here of negative 1 over 5. So remember, that means you're going to go down and right for a negative slope. Down 1 and right 5. Or you could go up 1 and left 5. And then we're going to get ready to graph our line. Before we graph it, we need to pay attention. There's no equal to part. So we're going to be graphing a dashed line. And then this is a less than symbol. So we're going to shade below the line. So we're going to get ready to graph our line here. And we're drawing a dashed line using our ruler. And then I go to where my line crosses the y-axis and I want to go below, which is here. So I'm going to shade on this side of my line. And so anything in the shaded region would be a solution to this inequality. Okay, oops. And that will be it. I do want to point out one thing to you, and that is, just as a reminder, in case some of you maybe have forgotten, that if you divide or multiply by a negative number on both sides of your inequality, do you remember what happens? Your inequality symbol is going to flip. So I just want to remind you of that because you might have one like that on your homework. So here's an example of what that might look like. Like if you have negative 2y is greater than or equal to 2x plus 8. When I divide by negative 2 everywhere, that's going to make that symbol become a less than or equal to symbol. So don't forget that when you get ready to do your homework. And that concludes our 7.5 notes.